The arena was a perfect circle of polished obsidian, its surface gleaming under the artificial sunlight of the warship's combat deck. Around it, the crew of the Cavani dreadnought gathered in eager anticipation, their eyes locked onto the center of the ring where the duel was about to begin. Commander Sylve stood with her hands behind her back, posture flawless, her long ears twitching in mild impatience. This was a waste of her time. The human, what was his name? Gabriel, had been captured during a skirmish on the mining colony of Draenos 4. He should have been processed like all the others, sent to the labor pits or executed for defying the Empire. Instead, he had demanded a duel for his freedom. The sheer arrogance. The challenge had been laughable, but protocol dictated that a prisoner who invoked the right of single combat could not be denied if they had the means to fight. It was a tradition rooted in the old ways of her people, meant for warriors, not for some primitive brawler who barely understood the weight of the blade he had requested. Sylve sighed, casting a glance at the man being unshackled across from her. He stretched his arms lazily, rolling his shoulders with the easy confidence of someone who had no idea they were about to die. "Well," Gabriel said, rubbing his wrists where the restraints had been, "wasn't expecting spa treatment, but I guess you don't do hand massages in captivity?" Sylve blinked. "What?" he said with a grin. "Just getting the blood flowing before I embarrass you in front of your friends." The gathered warriors erupted into laughter. Some jeered, others smirked in amusement, but Sylve remained stone-faced. Her kind valued wit, but they valued discipline more. A joke would not save him. Gabriel, to his credit, didn't seem the least bit rattled by the reaction. Instead, he studied her with an expression she found irritatingly casual. She had fought hundreds of duels, had stood across from some of the finest swordsmen in the galaxy. None of them had ever looked at her like she was a curiosity. He was broad-shouldered but lean, his frame built for endurance rather than brute strength. His dark hair was unkempt, a stray lock falling across his forehead, and his face bore the subtle scruff of someone who had been too busy fighting for his life to worry about shaving. But his eyes, those were sharp, too sharp for a man who was supposedly walking to his death. "Are you done stalling?" she asked, voice smooth but edged with irritation. Gabriel smirked. "Oh, is that what I'm doing? Thought we were just soaking in the atmosphere. It's not every day you get to fight on a spaceship. Nice place, by the way. Love the whole ominous war machine aesthetic." Sylve had him pegged now. He was one of those warriors, the kind that used humor as a shield, that threw words around like feints, hoping to shake their opponent before the fight even began. She had no patience for such nonsense. With a sharp motion, she unclasped the fastenings on her combat tunic, letting the regal fabric of her overcoat slide from her shoulders. Beneath it, she wore the skin-tight armor of a duelist, the obsidian we've designed for speed over protection. Her blade, a curved beauty of folded plasma steel, pulsed faintly in her grip as she activated its monomolecular edge. Gabriel's smirk faltered slightly. "Ha, fancy." He reached to the side, and one of the ship's quartermasters handed him a sword, an older Cavani training blade built for ceremonial duels rather than actual combat. Unlike hers, it had no energy edge, no enhancement, just good old-fashioned metal. Sylve arched an eyebrow. "You didn't request a more suitable weapon?" Gabriel tested the weight of the blade, giving it an experimental swing. "Nah, this will do." Sylve almost pitted him. The ship's commander, an elder warrior with battle scars tracing his cheek, stepped forward and raised his hand. "By the ancient rites, the duel shall proceed. Victory is claimed by surrender, incapacitation, or death." His gaze flicked between them. "Begin." Gabriel barely had time to set his stance before Sylve was upon him. She moved like a whisper of wind, striking fast and precise. The first blow should have taken him in the shoulder, a clean, decisive hit to end the fight before it even began. Didn't. Gabriel twisted at the last second, narrowly avoiding the strike. He stumbled slightly, regaining his footing, but there was no denying it, he had dodged. Sylve's eyes narrowed. Interesting. She pressed forward, sending a flurry of rapid strikes his way. Each one was designed to test his limits, to break his balance, to force an opening where she could end it cleanly. Gabriel met her blade with his own, the clang of steel on steel ringing through the arena. He wasn't as fast as her, but he was quick enough. More importantly, he was adaptive. Every move he made was sharper than the last, as if he were adjusting to her attacks in real time. She struck high, he ducked. She feinted left, he didn't take the bait. She slashed low, he blocked. The force of it sent him skidding back, but he held firm, his arms steady despite the impact. His eyes met hers, and, to her growing frustration, he grinned. "Not bad," he said, breathing hard. "You're not bad at all." Sylve's long ears twitched. "You are still standing," she admitted. "That is unexpected." Gabriel rolled his neck, wincing slightly. "Yeah. Trust me, I surprise myself sometimes too." The crowd murmured now, a shift in tone from amused to intrigued. They had expected a slaughter, not a contest. Sylve's grip on her sword tightened. She wasn't done yet. With renewed determination, she launched herself at him once more. The moment Sylve surged forward, Gabriel knew he was in trouble. Her speed was incredible, far beyond anything he'd encountered before. She moved with an almost liquid grace, her long ears twitching as she adjusted mid-motion, predicting his counters before he even made them. Gabriel barely had time to react before her blade came down in a vicious arc, aimed at his collarbone. He twisted, the strike grazing past his shoulder, close enough that he swore he felt the heat of the energy blade hum against his skin. Okay, I get it," he said, backpedaling. "You're fast, you've made your point. Maybe now we do that thing where we sit down and talk about our feelings instead." Sylve didn't answer. She pivoted, using the momentum of her missed strike to bring her sword around in a sweeping horizontal slash. Gabriel barely managed to block. The impact rattled his arms, sending a jolt up to his elbows. She was strong too, stronger than someone her size should be. He had fought enhanced soldiers before, cybernetically reinforced warriors who could tear through bulkheads with their bare hands. But Sylve wasn't augmented, at least not in any way he could see. She was just that damn good. He grimaced. "All right, note to self. Stop making her mad." Sylve's expression remained unreadable, but there was something in her golden eyes now, something sharpened by focus. "Speak less, fight better," she said, punctuating the statement with a sudden thrust. Gabriel sidestepped, barely, but she had anticipated that, twisting her blade at the last second. The monomolecular edge flicked toward his ribs, and only through sheer reflex did he manage to deflect it. The tip still caught the fabric of his shirt, slicing a clean line across the material. He glanced down at the fresh cut in his clothing, eyebrows raised. "Hey, this was my last decent shirt. Do you know how hard it is to find something that fits in an alien prison?" Sylve's lips twitched, but she didn't take the bait. Instead, she shifted her stance, angling her body in a way that made his stomach sink. She was getting serious now. "Fantastic," Gabriel exhaled, rolling his shoulders. This wasn't going to be won by luck alone. He needed to be smart. Sylve struck again, but this time he was ready. Instead of reacting on instinct, he watched, really watched how she moved. She was precise, but she wasn't reckless. Every step, every slash, every calculated pivot was designed to dismantle him piece by piece. But there was something else too, a pattern. Gabriel adjusted his footing. The next time she lunged, he didn't just dodge, he angled himself perfectly, letting her own momentum carry her forward just a fraction too much. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time since the fight began, she was off balance. Gabriel struck. It wasn't a flashy move, just a simple, well-timed step-in coupled with a sharp tap of his blade against the exposed part of her arm. A minor hit, but a hit nonetheless. The arena went silent. Sylve froze. Slowly, she looked down at where his blade had touched her. Gabriel grinned. "That's one." Sylve's ears twitched in what he could only assume was irritation, or maybe mild confusion, hard to tell with aliens. He barely had a second to appreciate the moment before she was on him again. Faster, sharper, more relentless than before. So much for making her doubt herself. Gabriel blocked, parried, dodged, ducked, swore under his breath, and then did all of those things again in rapid succession. His muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored them. If he stopped moving, he was dead. Sylve was pushing harder now, her strikes heavier, her precision even more refined. But that was the thing about a fight like this, when both opponents were skilled. It wasn't just about technique, it was about endurance. And endurance was something that Gabriel had in spades. He wasn't faster than her, he wasn't stronger than her, but he had spent years surviving against impossible odds, fighting battles he had no business walking away from. If this duel came down to who could outlast the other, he had a fighting chance. He could tell she was starting to feel it too. She wasn't tired, far from it, but she was adjusting more frequently now, adapting to his ability to read her movements. That meant she was thinking, thinking meant hesitation, and hesitation was an opening. Gabriel feinted left, but at the last second he shifted his weight, angling himself right instead. It wasn't a perfect trick. She saw through it almost immediately, but it was just enough to let him land another hit, this time a quick strike to the side of her leg. She hissed in frustration. "Two," he said, panting. "I gotta say, you're making me work for this." Sylve exhaled sharply. "You fight differently than any human I have faced." Gabriel wiped sweat from his brow. "Is that a compliment? Because I'll take it." "It is an observation," she said. "Oh, well, now I feel less special." Sylve studied him, her sword steady, her expression unreadable once more. Gabriel frowned. There was something different in the way she was looking at him now. Not frustration, not anger, curiosity. Great, he had impressed the scary alien warrior, which probably meant she was about to hit him even harder. She moved again, but this time her strikes weren't just fast. They were unpredictable. She had stopped relying on patterns, stopped using the refined, precise style he had been reading so well. Now she was adapting to him just as quickly as he had adapted to her. Gabriel barely managed to block the next blow, then the next, then the next, and then pain. A sharp, stinging line traced across his side, her blade just grazing him. Not enough to wound, but enough to leave a mark. Sylve stepped back. "That's one," she said, mirroring his earlier words. Gabriel winced, pressing a hand to his side. "Okay. Yeah. Walked into that one." The crowd murmured again, their excitement growing. They weren't watching an execution anymore. They were watching a real fight. Sylve straightened, leveling her blade at him once more. "You are not like the others," she said. Gabriel smirked despite the burning in his muscles. "Yeah, I get that a lot." The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. Gabriel wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up. His arms ached from the constant impact of Sylve's blade. His breathing had become ragged, his muscles screaming in protest with every dodge, block, and counter. Yet despite all of it, despite the exhaustion creeping into his bones, he was still standing. That was more than he had expected, more, it seemed, than Sylve had expected too. The Cavanese commander paced in a slow circle now, studying him with a level of intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. Her golden eyes flicked over his stance, his grip, the way his chest rose and fell as he tried to regulate his breath. Gabriel wiped sweat from his brow and gave her a lopsided grin. "You look like you're trying to solve a math problem." Sylve tilted her head, her long ears twitching slightly. "Mathematics is irrelevant to combat." "Not if you're calculating your odds," he countered. She considered that for a moment, then, surprisingly, smiled. It was brief, but it was there. "My odds remain in my favor." Gabriel exhaled sharply. "Yeah, that tracks." A murmur rippled through the gathered Cavanese warriors. This had gone on far longer than anyone had anticipated. They had expected a quick execution, a formality, a demonstration of their commander's superiority. Instead, they were witnessing something rare and even match. Sylve wasn't invincible, Gabriel wasn't overmatched. They were two fighters testing each other, pushing past their limits, and for some reason, that made him grin wider. He rolled his shoulders. Well, as much fun as this has been, I should probably start winning now. Sylve arched an elegant eyebrow. You believe you can? Gabriel shrugged. I mean, I believe in a lot of things. Gravity, coffee, the undeniable fact that most doors on alien warships are way too complicated. She lunged mid-sentence. Gabriel barely twisted out of the way in time. Oh, come on. I was talking. Then speak less, she countered, slashing at him again. He parried, stepping back. You ever heard of banter? Helps pass the time, keeps things light. Sylve's ears twitched, her movements fluid as she pressed forward. You joke to cover fear, human. Gabriel scoffed. Nah, I joke because it's funny. Another strike, another block. The dance continued. Sylve's precision was terrifying. Every motion was measured, each attack designed to expose his weak points. She wasn't just fighting him anymore. She was analyzing him in real time. But Gabriel wasn't just reacting anymore either. He was watching her, the way she shifted her weight, the micro-adjustments in her posture. She was testing him, and if she was testing him, that meant she wasn't sure how this would end. Gabriel smirked. That was something. All right, he said, exhaling. Let's change the tempo a little. This time, he didn't wait for her to attack. He surged forward, feinting right before pivoting left. Sylve reacted instantly, her blade flashing to intercept, only to realize too late that he had already shifted again, slipping inside her guard. For the first time, she was the one forced to retreat. The crowd reacted audibly, a ripple of surprise moving through them. Gabriel didn't let up. He pressed his advantage, forcing Sylve back step by step. She blocked his strikes with practiced efficiency, but the shift in dynamic was clear. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. Their blades clashed, locked for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, Gabriel met her gaze. Still think humans are weak? Sylve's golden eyes burned. Then, to his absolute surprise, she laughed. Not a mocking laugh, not a derisive one, a genuine, amused laugh. Gabriel blinked. That's not the reaction I expected. Sylve twisted, breaking the blade lock, and stepped back. You continue to surprise me. He exhaled. Yeah, well, it's a hobby. She studied him again, but this time her expression was different. The amusement lingered, the frustration was gone. Gabriel wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Sylve adjusted her stance, lowering her blade slightly. I have fought many warriors, she said. Some skilled, some powerful, but none have fought like you. Gabriel tilted his head. Because I'm just that good? Because you do not fight to prove something. Her gaze sharpened. You fight to survive. Gabriel hesitated. She wasn't wrong. He had been in more battles than he could count, had faced enemies who outmatched him in strength, speed, and numbers. He had never fought for glory or honor or some grand ideal. He fought because he had to, because not fighting meant dying. Sylve stepped forward, lowering her blade entirely. Gabriel tensed. What's happening? I have my answer. Which is? Sylve tilted her head. You are not weak. Gabriel blinked. Oh, well, that's nice to hear. He paused. Wait, does that mean I win? Sylve exhaled. It means the duel no longer interests me. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some confused, others openly shocked. Gabriel lowered his own sword slightly, wary. That's not really an answer. Sylve's expression softened, just a fraction. You fight as though you have always had to. A beat. I no longer wish to test that. Gabriel wasn't sure what to say to that. A moment of silence stretched between them before he cleared his throat. So we call it a draw? Sylve's lips twitched. You wish to claim victory? I mean, I wouldn't say no. She considered him for a long moment, then turned to the onlookers. The duel is over. One of the senior Cavanese warriors stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Commander, the prisoner. He is no longer a prisoner, Sylve said. Gabriel nearly choked. Wait, what? Sylv turned back to him. You fought for your freedom, you have it. Gabriel opened his mouth, then closed it. He wasn't about to argue, but still, he hadn't exactly expected this outcome. He glanced around, half expecting someone to protest, but the warriors merely watched, intrigued rather than outraged. Sylv sheathed her blade. You are interesting, Gabriel Shaw. He rubbed the back of his neck. I get that a lot. Sylv nodded once, then turned on her heel. Come, she said. We have much to discuss. Gabriel stared after her, then exhaled. Well, he muttered, shaking his head. That could have gone worse. Gabriel followed Sylv through the winding corridors of the Cavani warship, trying not to look as lost as he felt. It wasn't easy. For one, everything looked the same. Sleek metallic walls with an eerie blue luminescence running along their seams. It was like walking through the inside of a high-tech submarine built by aliens with an obsession for mood lighting. For another, every Cavani warrior they passed stopped what they were doing to watch him, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed amusement. A few looked like they wanted to stab him just to see if he could block it. Sylv, for her part, strode forward as if she hadn't just turned a death match into an awkward walking tour. Gabriel cleared his throat. So, where are we going? Sylv didn't slow. To the command deck. He blinked. Huh. And what exactly happens on the command deck? We command things, Sylv answered. Gabriel exhaled through his nose. Right? Should have seen that one coming. Sylv's long ears twitched, but she didn't turn. You are free now, Gabriel Shaw, but freedom on a warship is complicated. I'm getting that impression, he muttered, catching a glimpse of a particularly large Cavani warrior who was staring at him like he was an unsolved puzzle. The ship hummed beneath his boots, a constant low thrum of energy. Every now and then, a nearby console flickered, displaying alien text that meant absolutely nothing to him. The Cavani language was a mess of angular symbols that somehow looked both elegant and aggressively sharp at the same time. He leaned slightly toward Sylv. You're not going to throw me out an airlock, are you? She didn't stop walking. Not unless you attempt to steal one of our ships. Gabriel snorted. Hey, give me some credit. I'd at least try to negotiate first. Sylv gave him a sidelong glance, her lips twitching slightly before she faced forward again. That would be wise. They reached a large set of doors, far more ornate than the others. The moment Sylv approached, the metal slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the command deck. Gabriel's eyebrows rose. The room was huge, layered in multiple levels with platforms that curved around a central display of a holographic star map. The map shimmered with faint energy lines highlighting ships and planetary routes. Warriors moved between stations, monitoring screens filled with tactical readouts and shifting data. It was like stepping onto the bridge of some high-tech naval vessel, if that vessel was designed by a species that thought subtlety was for the weak. One of the officers turned as they entered, his expression unreadable. Commander, you return with a human? Sylv inclined her head. He is no longer a prisoner. The officer's gaze flicked to Gabriel, studying him with a mixture of skepticism and something that might have been mild amusement. An interesting decision. Gabriel clapped his hands together. Oh, I love when people say that about me. Always makes me feel like I'm about to get shot into space. Sylv gestured toward the map. We are currently en route to the nearest Cavani outpost. There you will be given the opportunity to... A shrill chime interrupted her. Every Cavani on the deck snapped to attention. A new set of data flared across the main display, rapid pulses of alien script scrolling too fast for Gabriel to follow. The officer turned sharply. Commander, we are receiving a distress signal. Sylv's ears twitched. Origin. Outer perimeter, Deep Space Sector 12. A Cavani scout vessel has engaged an unknown threat. Sylv moved to the console, studying the readings. Gabriel glanced at the display over her shoulder, not understanding a single word but recognizing the universal language of something just went horribly wrong. Hostiles? She asked. The officer hesitated. Unclear. The transmission was cut short. Sylv's fingers tightened around the console. Gabriel rubbed the back of his neck. So, just to clarify, are we running toward the possible death trap or away from it? Sylv turned her golden gaze to him. We are going to investigate. Gabriel sighed. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. The ship shifted as the engines surged, altering their course. The holographic map adjusted, highlighting a trajectory toward the last known coordinates of the distress signal. Gabriel folded his arms. You know, I could have just taken my newly earned freedom and stayed out of this. Sylv smirked slightly. Then why are you still here? Gabriel opened his mouth, hesitated, then exhaled. Damn it, he muttered. I hate when people make good points. Sylv turned back to the display, her expression sharpening. Whatever they were flying into, Gabriel had a feeling this was going to get a lot more complicated before it got better. The Cavani warship streaked through the void of deep space, engines humming with a steady, almost ominous rhythm. The bridge was tense. Gabriel could feel it in the way the warriors moved, their postures sharp, their eyes locked on the swirling holographic display at the center of the room. Sylv stood at the command console, studying the distress signal's last known coordinates. Her golden eyes flickered with unreadable emotion, but her grip on the console was firm, steady. Gabriel leaned against a nearby railing, arms crossed. So, on a scale of 1 to we're about to get horribly vaporized, how bad are we talking? Sylv didn't look up. That depends on what we find. Gabriel sighed. You know, it's not reassuring when the person in charge is also in the dark. The officer from earlier, Gabriel had decided to call him Grumpy until further notice, turned his head sharply. We do not walk into battles unprepared, human. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Buddy, if I had a credit for every time I heard that right before things went sideways, I could buy my own warship. Sylv's lips twitched, but she didn't comment. A new set of data flashed across the main display. The ship's AI chirped in a low, measured tone. Dropping out of warp in 10. Gabriel rolled his shoulders. All right, here's hoping it's just a false alarm and not, say, a space kraken. Sylv blinked. A what? Don't worry about it. The ship decelerated with a lurch, real space unfolding around them as the stars snapped back into sharp focus. The moment they dropped out of warp, alarms blared. Contacts detected. Grumpy announced, his voice clipped. Multiple unknown vessels. Gabriel stepped closer, eyes narrowing at the display. A wreckage field stretched before them, pieces of metal drifting lifelessly. The remains of the Cavani scout vessel floated amid the debris, its hull blackened, its structure twisted from some violent impact. But that wasn't what made Gabriel tense. It was the other ships. Sleek, angular crafts, dark as the void itself, hovered near the wreckage, their forms pulsing faintly with strange violet energy. They had no visible cockpits, no clear weapon systems, but something about them made the hair on the back of Gabriel's neck stand up. Sylv's expression darkened. Unknown vessels. Hold position and identify yourselves. The only response was silence. Then one of the ships moved, not in the way a normal ship should move, not with the gradual acceleration of thrusters or the calculated drift of inertia. It flickered. One moment it was there, the next it was closer. Gabriel stiffened. Okay, that's unsettling. Shields up. Sylv ordered. Prepare weapons. The warriors moved with precision, but Gabriel could tell they were just as unnerved as he was. The way the enemy ships moved, it was unnatural, like they weren't flying, but phasing. The lead ship pulsed once, then a voice, cold, mechanical, layered, as if multiple tones spoke at once, resonated across the bridge. You do not belong here. Gabriel made a face. Oh, great cryptic threats. That's never a good sign. Sylv remained unmoved. Identify yourselves. The voice came again. This domain is not yours to trespass. Leave or be unmade. Gabriel shot Sylv a look. Okay, so I vote for leaving. Anyone else? Sylv didn't take her eyes off the ships. We do not retreat. Grumpy grunted. They destroyed a Cavani vessel. That alone demands a response. Gabriel sighed. Cool, cool. Love the warrior pride thing. Really, but counterpoint. Those things just broke physics. The enemy ships flickered again, this time appearing even closer, their hulls rippling like liquid shadow. Then, without warning, they opened fire. Blinding arcs of violet energy lashed out, streaking toward the Cavani warship. The impact was immediate. Gabriel barely had time to brace as the entire vessel shuddered violently, consoles flaring with emergency warnings. Sylve snapped into action. Return fire. The bridge erupted into chaos as Cavani gunners retaliated, launching a barrage of plasma rounds. The enemy ships twisted and flickered, dodging in ways that made Gabriel's stomach turn. This is not how space battles are supposed to work, he shouted over the alarms. Sylve ignored him, focused entirely on the battle. Gabriel could see it now, the calculation in her stance, the way her fingers danced across the controls. She was already adapting, already searching for patterns in the enemy's movements. Another blast rocked the ship. Grumpy cursed. Shields failing. Gabriel clenched his jaw. You got a plan here, Commander? Sylve's eyes flicked to him. Then she did something he didn't expect. She smiled. It was small, subtle, but it was there. Gabriel groaned. Oh no. That's the I have a terrible idea smile. Sylve turned to her crew. Target their energy signatures. Aim for disruption, not destruction. Grumpy frowned. You want to disable them? They move by phasing through real space, Sylve said. If we disrupt that, they will be trapped. Gabriel hesitated. That actually makes sense. He paused. I hate that it makes sense. The Cavani weapons recalibrated, shifting frequencies. A new volley launched, this time striking true. One of the enemy ships flickered wildly, its form distorting. Then suddenly it was still. The Cavani bridge crew exhaled in unison. Sylve nodded once. Now we talk. Gabriel ran a hand down his face. I swear, if the creepy space ghosts start whispering in my brain, I am officially quitting this adventure. Sylve glanced at him. You could have chosen to remain uninvolved. Gabriel gave her a tired smile. Yeah, but where's the fun in that? The boarding team moved through the docking tube, stepping onto the dark surface of the enemy ship. The moment Gabriel's boots touched the deck, he felt a chill, not physical, but something deeper, like the ship itself was studying them. The interior was just as unsettling as the exterior, smooth walls that curved unnaturally, surfaces that didn't seem solid so much as shifting between states of matter. There were no panels, no buttons, no visible controls, just an endless, silent corridor. Gabriel adjusted his grip on the energy pistol he'd been given. So, anyone else feel like we're walking through the digestive tract of some ancient space god? Robin shot him a glare. Be silent. Human. Gabriel grinned. Not a chance, buddy. Sylve ignored them both, eyes scanning their surroundings. Stay alert. The team moved carefully, weapons at the ready. Then, without warning, the walls flickered. Gabriel froze. Oh nope, 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 nope. A shape materialized ahead of them. It wasn't standing so much as forming. It shifted between dimensions, its limbs phasing in and out of reality. It had a vaguely humanoid outline, tall, elongated, but its head was featureless, a smooth void where a face should be. Then it spoke. You have made a mistake. The voice didn't come from it, not in the normal sense. It vibrated through the air, sinking directly into Gabriel's skull. Robin immediately raised his weapon. Identify yourself. The entity tilted its head. You do not belong here. Gabriel exhaled. Yeah, we got that message loud and clear the first time. Sylve stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Who are you? The figure's body flickered again, phasing between solidity and nothingness. We are what remains. Gabriel groaned. Oh great. Love a good cryptic answer, always super helpful. Sylve ignored him. Remains of what? The entity shifted its form, distorting. A war that never ended. The team exchanged weary glances. Gabriel frowned. So, Just to clarify, are you ghosts, refugees, or some kind of ancient space malware? The entity twitched. We are the forgotten, the fractured. We exist between. Sylve narrowed her eyes. And you attacked our scout ship. Why? For the first time, the figure seemed to hesitate. It was not meant. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. So, what, you accidentally murdered them? You entered the threshold. Sylve stiffened. The threshold. The entity flickered again, its outline distorting. This space is not yours. It never was. It belongs to the ones who came before. A deep, unsettling silence followed. Gabriel slowly turned to Sylve. You're going to tell me you don't know what they're talking about, aren't you? Sylve didn't answer. Robin tightened his grip on his weapon. Commander, I do not trust this creature. Sylve exhaled. Nor do I. She turned back to the entity. If this is your space, why have we never encountered you before? The figure's voice softened, almost sorrowful. Because you were never meant to. Gabriel frowned. Okay, I don't like the way you said that. The ship suddenly shook, a deep, resonating pulse that sent a wave of energy through the walls. The entity's form glitched, its body warping as if it were being pulled apart. They have seen you. Sylve's ears twitched. Who? The entity flickered wildly, its voice splintering. Run! And then it vanished. Gabriel inhaled sharply. Oh, that's so not good. A new alarm blared from the Cavani warship's comms. Commander! A voice crackled through. Multiple anomalies detected. Something is... The transmission cut off. Sylve spun toward the boarding tube. Back to the ship. Now. Gabriel didn't need to be told twice. As they ran, the enemy vessel shuddered around them. The walls flickered just like the entity had, as if the entire ship was phasing out of existence. Gabriel gritted his teeth. Sylve, please tell me we're not about to get trapped in another dimension. She didn't answer, which was really not comforting. The Cavani warship trembled as Gabriel and the boarding team sprinted through the docking tube, the weightless void flickering on either side of them. Behind them, the captured enemy ship was collapsing, not physically, but in a way that made reality itself seem wrong, like someone had started deleting it from existence pixel by pixel. The smooth, eerie hull twisted and faded in and out, and Gabriel could swear he heard voices echoing, layered, speaking in languages he didn't understand but somehow felt. I swear, if we get haunted by interdimensional space ghosts, I'm quitting. Gabriel panted, leaping onto the warship's deck. Sylve was right behind him, barking orders. Seal the airlock. Full emergency thrust away from the vessel. Robin slammed his palm against the control panel, and the docking tube detached just as the alien ship's form collapsed entirely into itself. The Cavani warship roared as its engines ignited, streaking away from the anomaly at full burn. On the main display, the enemy ship gave one final flicker, and then it was gone, not destroyed, not exploded, just erased. Gabriel exhaled. Okay, that was horrifying. Let's never do that again. Sylve turned to the comms officer. Damage report? Minimal. Shields held. No trace of the enemy vessel remains. Gabriel ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, well, that's extra creepy. It's one thing when your enemies blow up, it's another when they just stop existing. Sylve was silent for a long moment. Her golden eyes locked onto the empty void where the ship had been. They called this space the threshold. Gabriel nodded, and said we weren't supposed to be here, which, gotta admit, is not a great thing to hear after you've barged in. Robin scowled. This changes everything. If there are entities that exist outside our understanding, beings that can manipulate reality itself, then... He trailed off as if unwilling to finish the thought. Gabriel sighed. Yeah. It means the whole galactic power structure might be built on top of something ancient and pissed off. Super comforting. Sylve's ears flicked, deep in thought. They weren't hostile. Robin scoffed. They destroyed our scout ship. Sylve shook her head. The entity said it was not meant. An accident. They were warning us, not hunting us. Gabriel rubbed his temples. Okay, I'm no expert in alien diplomacy, but accidentally vaporizing someone's entire crew is a pretty bad first impression. Sylv let out a slow breath. It means this is not a war. Not yet. Gabriel glanced at her. There was something different in her voice, something thoughtful. She had started this entire mess believing in absolute dominance, in strength as the defining measure of all things, but now she was considering other possibilities. Gabriel smirked. So what's the move, Commander? Do we file an official oops? We stepped into forbidden space apology letter. Sylv turned toward him, studying him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she chuckled. It was small, quiet, but unmistakably amused. You continue to be impossible. Gabriel grinned. It's a talent. Sylv shook her head, but her gaze was lighter than before. She turned back to the bridge. We will return to Cavani High Command and report what we found. This is no longer a simple war. It is something greater. Robin frowned. And if they demand action? Sylv's expression hardened. Then we ensure they understand the truth. Gabriel leaned against a console. And what's the truth? Sylv's golden eyes flickered. That for the first time, the Cavani are not the strongest force in the universe. The bridge fell into a moment of contemplative silence. Then Gabriel clapped his hands together. All right, well, I don't know about you guys, but I think I deserve a drink. Maybe several. Sylv raised an eyebrow. You consume alcohol after near-death experiences? Gabriel scoffed. Lady, I consume alcohol because of near-death experiences. Sylv let out another quiet, amused breath, then turned to her crew. Set course for home. As the ship turned away from the threshold, leaving the void behind, Gabriel watched Sylv from the corner of his eye. She was different now, still a warrior, still a commander, but something had changed. She had lost a battle against a human. She had faced an enemy that defied reality itself, and yet, instead of breaking, she had adapted, learned. Gabriel smirked to himself. For someone who once believed herself invincible, Sylv had just proven something far more important. She was capable of change, and in the vastness of space that might just be the strongest thing of all. Weeks later, Gabriel found himself sitting in a dimly lit bar on the Cavani homeworld. He had been granted a temporary residence permit, a gesture that still surprised him given the Cavani's general distrust of outsiders. The bar, like most things on the Cavani homeworld, was sleek and minimalist, all sharp angles and polished surfaces. The patrons were a mix of off-duty soldiers, merchants, and what Gabriel assumed were Cavani equivalent of bureaucrats. He was nursing a drink that tasted vaguely of citrus and motor oil, surprisingly palatable, and watching a holographic news feed playing on a nearby screen. The news was dominated by reports about the Threshold incident, as it had come to be known. The Cavani High Command, after much debate and internal strife, had officially acknowledged the existence of the entities from beyond, albeit with a carefully worded statement emphasizing the potential for misunderstanding and the need for continued vigilance. Sylv, to Gabriel's amusement, had become something of a media darling, her stoic demeanor and combat prowess lending an air of credibility to the otherwise outlandish claims. He saw her face on the screen now, giving a brief interview about the importance of interdimensional awareness to a group of wide-eyed reporters. He chuckled and took another sip of his drink. Enjoying the show? A voice said. Gabriel looked up to see Sylv standing beside his table, dressed in a more casual, but still impeccably tailored version of her military uniform. Hey, Commander, Gabriel said, just catching up on the latest alien ghost news. You're doing a great job selling the "we're not completely screwed" angle. Sylv sat down across from him. It is important to maintain calm, right? Because panic is never helpful when you're facing reality-bending space monsters, Gabriel quipped. Sylv's lips twitched. Humor remains your preferred coping mechanism? Pretty much, Gabriel admitted. Either that or running really fast. But running doesn't seem appropriate right now. A server approached and Sylv ordered a drink, something that looked suspiciously like liquefied metal. So, Gabriel said, leaning forward, what brings you to this Charming establishment? Sylve's expression became more serious. I wish to speak with you, outside of official channels. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Sounds ominous.
I'm intrigued.
The High Command, Sylve said, lowering her voice slightly, is divided. Some believe we should pursue a diplomatic solution with these entities. Others advocate for a preemptive strike. Preemptive strike? Against beings who can erase you from existence. Gabriel said incredulously. That sounds like a terrible plan. I concur, Sylve said. But I am finding it difficult to sway them. I lack sufficient evidence to demonstrate the true nature of these entities. And that's where I come in, right? Gabriel said. Sylve nodded. You interacted with the entity directly. You may have perceived things that were missed by our sensors. Gabriel frowned. I mostly perceived that I wanted to be anywhere else. But I guess I did pick up on a few things. He paused, thinking back to the unsettling encounter on the alien ship. They seemed lost, confused, and definitely scared, like they were trapped between dimensions or something. Sylve listened intently, her golden eyes unwavering. Did you sense any malice? Any intent to harm us? Gabriel hesitated. Not really. More like desperation, like they were trying to protect something. The threshold, Sylve said. They mentioned the ones who came before. Do you have any idea who they were talking about? Gabriel shrugged. None. Ancient aliens? Forgotten civilizations? Your guess is as good as mine. Sylve let out a slow breath. This changes everything. If we are to navigate this, we need to learn everything we can about what and who they are. I've put together a research team. And you want me on it? Gabriel said. Sylve nodded. You have a unique perspective. And, she added, a hint of amusement in her voice, you are surprisingly resilient. Gabriel chuckled. Resilient and witty. It's a deadly combination. He paused, considering the offer. He had been enjoying his newfound freedom, exploring the Cavani homeworld, tasting exotic foods, learning bits and pieces of their complex culture. But he also felt a pull, a sense of responsibility. He had seen what these entities were capable of, had felt their desperation. And he knew that if the Cavani High Command made the wrong decision, the consequences could be catastrophic. He looked at Sylve, her face determined, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. He knew that whatever lay ahead, it wouldn't be easy. But he also knew that he couldn't walk away. He grinned. All right, Commander, he said. Count me in. But I get hazard pay and a lifetime supply of that motor oil drink. Sylve smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Agreed. The fate of the galaxy may depend on it. Over the next few months, Gabriel worked alongside Sylve and her research team, delving into the mysteries of the threshold. They pored over ancient texts, analyzed sensor data, and even conducted simulated incursions into the altered dimension. Gabriel found himself surprisingly adept at the research, his quick wit and unconventional thinking proving to be valuable assets. He learned to decipher bits and pieces of the alien language, to understand the complex energies that pulsed through the threshold. He even started to develop a grudging respect for the Cavani, their unwavering dedication, their meticulous attention to detail. But the more they learned, the more complex the situation became. They discovered that the entities were indeed the remnants of an ancient civilization, one that had been all but wiped out by a cataclysmic war fought across dimensions. The threshold was not a place, but a wound, a tear in the fabric of reality, and the entities were its guardians, desperately trying to contain the damage. They also discovered that the Cavani were not the first to stumble upon the threshold. Other races had come before, some had been driven away, others had been absorbed. The High Command predictably grew more anxious. The faction that advocated for a preemptive strike gained more support. Sylve fought tirelessly to maintain the fragile peace, but she was running out of time. One evening, Gabriel found Sylve standing alone on a balcony overlooking the Cavani capital city. The city lights glittered below, a dazzling display of technological prowess. But Gabriel knew that beneath the surface of this civilization lay a deep-seated fear, a fear of the unknown. "They're going to do it, aren't they?" Gabriel said, breaking the silence. "They're going to launch the attack." Sylv nodded, her face grim. "I have lost the argument. The fleet is preparing to depart." "And you can't stop them?" Gabriel said. Sylv shook her head. "Not without starting a civil war. I will not risk tearing apart my own people." Gabriel sighed. "So, what do we do?" Sylv turned to him, her golden eyes filled with a quiet despair. "There is one last thing I can try." "Which is?" Gabriel said, his heart sinking. "I am going to the threshold." Gabriel stared at her, incredulous. "You're going there? Alone?" "I am hoping to communicate with the entities, to offer them something they cannot refuse. A chance to heal the wound." "And what if they don't want to heal it?" Gabriel said. "What if they just want to wipe us all out?" Sylv hesitated. "Then I will die trying to protect my people." Gabriel shook his head. "That's insane. You can't just go there and hope for the best." Sylv took a step closer to him, her voice soft but firm. "I have no other choice, but I cannot do this alone." "You want me to go with you?" Gabriel said, his voice barely a whisper. Sylv nodded. "You are the only one I trust, the only one who understands what is at stake." Gabriel looked at her unwavering conviction, at her willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of her people. He knew that this was a suicide mission, that the odds of survival were slim to none. But he also knew that he couldn't let her go alone. He had come too far, seen too much, to turn back now. He took a deep breath, steeling his nerves. "All right, Commander," he said, a lopsided grin spreading across his face. "Let's go screw up some dimensions." Together, Sylv and Gabriel prepared for their perilous journey into the threshold. They gathered every piece of information they could find, studying maps of the altered dimension, learning the language of the entities, acquiring specialized equipment designed to withstand the dimensional fluctuations. Sylv, using her authority as commander, secured a small, stealth-equipped vessel for their mission, one that could slip past the Cavani fleet undetected. As they prepared to depart, Gabriel couldn't help but feel a sense of dread, but also a strange kind of excitement. He was about to venture into the unknown, to confront beings beyond human comprehension, and to potentially save an entire galaxy in the process. It was, to say the least, an interesting turn of events for a former prisoner of war. On the day of their departure, Sylv and Gabriel stood on the landing platform, the small stealth ship gleaming in the artificial light. The Cavani capital city buzzed around them, oblivious to the momentous decision that had just been made. As they approached the ramp, Robin appeared, his face a mask of concern. "Commander," he said, his voice low, "I cannot allow this. It is too dangerous." Sylv turned to him, her expression firm. "I appreciate your concern, Robin, but this is my decision. I am responsible for my people." "But you are risking your life," Robin protested. "And yours as well," Sylv countered. "Gabriel will be accompanying me." Robin turned to Gabriel, his eyes filled with disbelief. "You agreed to this? You are even more foolish than I thought." Gabriel shrugged. "Hey, someone has to keep the commander from doing anything too crazy." "This is not a joke," Robin said, his voice rising. "This is suicide." Sylv placed a hand on Robin's shoulder. "Trust me, Robin. We will do everything we can to return. But if we do not, you must ensure that the Cavani pursue peace, not war." Robin looked at Sylv, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and respect. He knew that he could not change her mind. "May the ancestors guide you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sylv nodded, then turned and walked up the ramp, Gabriel following close behind. As the ramp closed behind them, Gabriel turned back and gave Robin a small wave. Robin just stood there, watching them go, his face a picture of despair. Once inside the ship, Sylv took the pilot's seat, her fingers flying across the controls. Gabriel strapped himself into the co-pilot's chair, watching as the ship powered up. The engines hummed to life, filling the small vessel with a low, resonant thrum. Sylve glanced at Gabriel, a small smile on her face. "Ready?" she asked. Gabriel took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." Sylve nodded, then engaged the stealth systems and released the docking clamps. The ship glided silently out of the landing bay and into the vast expanse of space. They traveled for hours, carefully avoiding the Cavaney fleet, until they reached the coordinates of the threshold. As they approached the altered dimension, the ship began to shake, the instruments flickering wildly. Gabriel felt a strange sensation, a tingling in his skin, as if the very fabric of reality was being pulled apart around them. Sylve gripped the controls, her face a picture of concentration. Entering the threshold, she announced, her voice tight. The ship lurched violently, then plunged into a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. Gabriel felt a sense of disorientation, as if he was falling through space and time. The ship bucked and twisted, struggling to maintain course in the turbulent dimensional currents. Outside the viewport, the reality was warping into bizarre and impossible forms. Colors swirled and bled into each other, geometric shapes shifted and morphed, and fragments of familiar objects appeared and disappeared in an instant. It was a landscape of pure chaos, a realm where the laws of physics held no sway. As they navigated deeper into the threshold, they began to encounter the entities. They were everywhere, shimmering forms that drifted through the distorted landscape, their bodies phasing in and out of reality. Some ignored them, others watched them with a detached curiosity. Gabriel felt a sense of unease, as if they were being observed, analyzed, judged. Sylve remained focused on her task, carefully following the maps they had compiled, searching for the center of the dimensional wound. They traveled for what felt like days, enduring the constant turbulence and the unsettling presence of the entities, until they finally reached their destination. A massive, swirling vortex of energy, a tear in the fabric of reality so immense that it threatened to consume everything around it. This was the heart of the threshold, the source of all the chaos and instability. As they approached the vortex, the ship began to fail, the engines sputtering and dying, the hull groaning under the strain. Sylve fought to maintain control, but it was no use. The ship was being pulled towards the vortex, its fate sealed. "We're not going to make it," Gabriel said, his voice filled with despair. Sylve nodded, her face resigned. "We have come too far. It is time to attempt our communication." Sylve activated a special device they had created, a device that was designed to broadcast a message of peace to the entities, a message that expressed their desire to heal the wound and restore balance to the dimensions. The device hummed to life, emitting a series of complex tones and frequencies that resonated throughout the threshold. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the vortex began to react. The swirling energies intensified, the colors became brighter, and the entities began to converge on the ship, their forms shimmering with anticipation. Gabriel felt a surge of hope, but also a growing sense of dread. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew that it would change everything. The entities surrounded the ship, their forms coalescing into a single, massive entity, a being of pure energy and consciousness. The entity extended a tendril of energy towards the ship, probing, searching, analyzing. Gabriel felt a sense of intrusion, as if his very thoughts were being read, his memories dissected. He struggled to resist, but it was no use. The entity was too powerful. The entity turned its attention to Sylve, her face illuminated by the ethereal glow. Sylve stood tall, her eyes unwavering, her spirit resolute. The entity probed her mind, searching for her true intentions. Sylve offered no resistance, allowing the entity to see her sincerity, her desire for peace, her willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of her people. The entity remained still for a long moment, as if contemplating what it had seen. Then it released Sylve, withdrawing its tendril of energy. The entity turned its attention back to the vortex, its form shifting and changing, as if it was preparing to take action. The ship trembled, the air crackled with energy, and Gabriel felt a sense of anticipation, as if something momentous was about to occur. The entity began to sing, a haunting melody that resonated throughout the threshold, a song of sorrow, of loss, of hope. As the entity sang, the vortex began to respond. The swirling energies calmed, the colors faded, and the tear in reality began to slowly close. The threshold was healing. Gabriel watched in awe, his heart filled with hope and wonder. They had done it. They had succeeded in communicating with the entities, in convincing them to heal the wound. The galaxy was saved, but the healing came at a price. As the vortex closed, the ship was caught in the collapsing energies, its hull torn apart, its engines destroyed. The ship began to drift, spinning helplessly in the void, its life support systems failing. Sylve and Gabriel were trapped, with no hope of rescue. "It seems we have accomplished our mission, but not in the way we had hoped," Sylve said, her voice calm. Gabriel nodded. "Yeah, well, at least we went out with a bang." Sylve smiled. "It has been an honor to fight alongside you, Gabriel Shaw." "The honor was all mine, Commander," Gabriel said. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with a mix of sadness and respect. They had faced death together, had saved a galaxy together, and had formed a bond that would last for eternity. They closed their eyes, waiting for the end to come, but the end never came. Instead, a new light filled the ship. The entities had returned, their forms shimmering with gratitude. They reached out their hands, offering their help. Gabriel felt a surge of energy, a sensation of warmth and peace, as the entities began to repair the ship, to restore its systems, to heal their wounds. The entities were not just guardians of the threshold. They were also healers, protectors, saviors. They had recognized the sincerity of Sylve and Gabriel's intentions and had chosen to reward their bravery with a gift beyond measure. When the Cavaney fleet finally arrived to rescue them, they found Sylve and Gabriel alive and well, their ship fully repaired, the threshold calm and stable. The Cavaney were astounded, unable to comprehend what had happened. Sylve and Gabriel told them the story of their journey, of their encounter with the entities, of the healing of the wound. The Cavaney listened in silence, their faces filled with awe and respect. The High Command, humbled by the events, finally agreed to pursue a path of peace and cooperation with the entities. The Cavaney fleet stood down, and a new era of understanding began. In the years that followed, the Cavaney established a permanent presence in the threshold, working alongside the entities to maintain the stability of the altered dimension and to learn from the ancient civilization that had once thrived there. Sylve became a celebrated hero, a symbol of courage, compassion, and the power of diplomacy. She dedicated her life to fostering understanding between the Cavaney and the entities, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. Gabriel, for his part, remained by her side, offering his wit, his wisdom, and his unwavering support. He became an ambassador, a bridge between two worlds, a testament to the transformative power of hope. The Cavaney never forgot their encounter with Gabriel Shaw, the human prisoner who had challenged their assumptions, defied their expectations, and ultimately helped them to save the galaxy. And Gabriel, for all his complaining and sarcastic remarks, never regretted his decision to fight for something greater than himself. He had found a purpose, a belonging, and a love that transcended the boundaries of species and dimensions. Together, Sylve and Gabriel ushered in an era of peace and understanding, proving that even in the darkest of times, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, hope can always prevail. And as they looked out at the stars, they knew that their journey was far from over, that there were still countless mysteries to explore, countless challenges to overcome. But they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything the universe threw their way. They were, after all, the saviors of the galaxy, and that was a title they wore with pride.